comfortable? All right, if you'll call the next witness, please.
Thank you, Dr. Buster. The state calls Dr. Jill Olek.
All right. Could you spell her last name, please?
O-L-E-K.
All right, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, if the witness is long, we may take a break in, but before she's completed. Okay.
Swear that the evidence you will give in this case will be the truth, so help you God? Have a seat, please.
Liz, I can have this for, I can have my notes.
Yes, you can have your notes with you.
Okay.
State your name, please.
Jill Olek.
Okay, and that's spelled O-L-E-K, is
Yes.
that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me you'd asked me before, but you asked me just now when you were sitting down, and I can have my notes with me, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I said yes, and I will say as a caveat to that, Your Honor, that if I suppose that I should say yes, you can have them with her, assuming they're the notes that everybody has. I mean, so
They
I need to ask that.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and establish what notes she has.
Yeah. What? I mean, the notes you have with you are those the same notes that would be in the hospital record?
I have the hospital record notes, and then I also just printed off a reference lab for normal values for children for pediatric levels.
Okay. A reference.
This is not within your.
Okay, but that's not a note, related to this particular case.
No.
It's just what normal values would be.
If you would answer verbally, please, Doctor.
I'm
Always
sorry.
answer verbally so that the court
Okay.
can.
Yes, sir.
All right, Dr. Olek, your occupation is you're a medical doctor, is that correct?
Yes.
And where do you practice?
I practice within Phoebe, so I practice at Phoebe Family Sports Medicine and at Phoebe Sumter Medical Center.
And are you licensed to practice medicine in Georgia?
Yes, sir. Family medicine.
Okay, how long have you been so licensed?
Since 2007.
From the time you graduated from college forward, can you tell the jury what your educational background is?
I have a bachelor's in medicine, a bachelor's in hyperbaric medicine. I have a doctorate in medicine.
Okay. Like a PhD type?
No, it's a medical doctor.
Oh, okay. The degree of doctor. Of
Medical degree
okay. Understood.
of medicine.
Okay. And after you graduated from medical school, did you engage in any postgraduate training or postgraduate programs?
I did a 3-year family medicine residency
And where was that?
at Phoebe Putney.
Are you board certified in any particular discipline?
I am board certified in family medicine, and I'm also ACLS trained, BLS, and PALS.
Okay. And what is ACLS and
Advanced cardio life support, basic life support, and pediatric life support. Advanced life support.
okay, so advanced life support and advanced pediatric life support? Okay. As a general as a doctor of family medicine and also someone who works in the emergency room, do you have experience in dealing with different types of illnesses and injuries and conditions that may cause someone to seek medical care?
Yes, sir.
And your training and experience, does that include at times having to make determinations or give consideration to issues regarding the probable causes or the probable source of particular injuries or conditions?
Part of medicine is trying to identify what is wrong with the patient, and so some of it is fact-based, most of it is fact-based, but there are times where we have to speculate what might have happened.
Okay. Is it important to you to know what happened when you can find that out?
If we can, it helps with the story, yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would tender Dr. Olek as an expert in the general practice of medicine, including evaluation and diagnosis of injuries, illnesses, and other conditions, and further including determination of probable or likely causes of those injuries, conditions, and the like.
Mr. Gamble, do you wish to voir dire the witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Dr. Olek, good morning. My name is T. Gamble. I represent Ms. Poague.
Good morning.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand you're a family practitioner, correct?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And so you primarily practice in just your, whatever that entails. I mean, we all know the family doctor type stuff, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're presenting yourself today to be an expert concerning diagnosis and determination of what caused certain injuries or maybe illnesses, etc. Can you tell me what credentials you have that make you believe you're an expert in that particular field?
I'm an expert in medicine. I'm not an expert in determining. I'm an expert in medicine.
And is that medicine because you have a medical degree?
Yes, sir, and I've been practicing close to 18 years now.
But in practicing medicine for 18 years, have you ever been qualified in a courtroom as an expert on determining causes of injuries and death and that type of thing?
I don't believe that's why I'm here, sir. I could be wrong, but I'm here to testify on my involvement with the baby.
And I understand that you're here to testify to that, and certainly you've got some information about that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And you were present and did some of the treatment, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you heard the district attorney who said he was asking, have you qualified not just as an expert in the field of family medicine, but also in determination of causes and of that type thing in injuries. You heard him say that as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And my question directly to you is, what particular credentials are you presenting to this court today to tell this court that you're qualified to be an expert other than the fact that you have a medical degree?
I understand what we are taught in medicine with regards to, when I answer this question, can I make this more specific with the case, or is this supposed to be a broad-based question?
Broad-based right now. Just
Broad-based, okay.
qualifications.
And so we see a variety of cases in the emergency room in family medicine. We can see and we're trained on what is likely the cause of these things. And so, yes.
But you've not been board certified in anything of that nature, have you?
I am not a forensic pathologist.
Correct. And you're also, again, not only have you not been sworn in as expert in this courtroom, but you've never been sworn in as an expert on that particular field in any courtroom across the United States, correct?
No, sir.
Yeah, I would object to her being qualified as an expert in that particular field, not to her being an expert in family medicine, but in those diagnoses and her being able to make a conclusion about what she believes the causes are.
The causes of
The injuries, but her being able to give an opinion about the cause of those injuries.
Are you intending to ask her questions about causation of the injuries?
Some of the questions I intend to ask her, I think, will cover that. But the way she's tendered, Your Honor, is as an expert generally in the field of medicine, and the field of medicine, as she's just testified, includes those things. Includes examination, includes assessment, includes diagnosis, includes determining cause if cause can be determined, etc.
I'll tell you what I want to do. We're not going to get through with this witness before the jury needs a lunch break anyway. I want to address this with you after I let the jury go to lunch. So I'm going to let the jury go to lunch until 1 o'clock. I'm going to ask you to remember my instructions and to be back here at 1 o'clock, and we'll conclude the witness. Dr. Eckert, would you step out for just a second, please? Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to go back in the same room?
No, you can just wait right out.
Why would that be a problem? No.
All right, based upon what the doctor has said thus far about her qualifications, I think she can certainly give opinions about the conditions she saw, what they were, what the injuries were, opinions that something may have been blunt force trauma, or trauma caused this, or trauma caused, what caused it. But if you're seeking to ask her, could it fall from 8 inches or 40 inches, or all the different things that you asked Dr. Busman, I do question whether you've laid that foundation at this point. Especially when she says, I'm not an expert at determining the causes.
Yes, sir. Understood. And
I guess what I'm wanting to know is exactly how far you're wanting to go with the causation part of it. Like, could it happen by falling in a circular, all those type of questions that you asked Dr. Busman, I don't think she indicated that level of experience.
I believe that she would testify that the injuries that she observed would have been the result of blunt force trauma. That they would have been the result of sort of locally applied trauma. Like an impact to this part of the body or that part of the body would be necessary to cause this or that.
And what's your response to that?
I don't really object to that. I recognize that she could say, I saw these injuries and it appeared to me it was some type of blunt force trauma. Right. But if she's trying to expand upon that and give specifics about this, was it or was not it, that's when she's moving into an area.
I guess I'm not sure she's going to be able to answer all the hypothetical questions, irrespective of whether it would be a good idea to ask her all those same questions that were asked of Dr. Busman. Now, I'll bring her back in and let you see if you can lay further foundation for that. But if you're not planning on going that far, what I would suggest is we go ahead and let her testify. If there's any objection to any particular question, I don't declare them an expert anyway. I say they can give opinion testimony in the area of their expertise. Then, if there is an objection to any particular question that either one of you ask, I'll hear it when you make the objection. But if you want to lay further foundation while we're addressing this issue before we go to lunch, you're certainly welcome to.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't really intend to. I mean, I suppose that when I look back at Dr. Busman's testimony, I mean, well, I asked some similar some questions of that.
Well,
similar
both of
nature.
you,
I mean,
asked
I
a lot
will-
of different questions of Dr. Busman, and I'm not so sure there could have been some objections to some of those questions by both sides. I mean, both of you kind of went far afield with this.
Yes, sir. Understood. No, I probably will, with the objection being what it is, and the court's ruling or explanation being what it is, then I would expect to limit those questions somewhat, unless and until I asked additional questions to establish a further foundation for her ability to answer.
Okay. So thus far, she's clearly established that she has experience with diagnosing matters and the basic cause of matters like blunt force trauma, things of that nature. She said, I working in an emergency room, I can identify the cause of a thing. But all the hypotheticals, I don't think she's at that point. And so I'll just let you know that at this point, I probably would not allow those questions if objected to. But when you bring her back in, if you have any other questions, either of you want to ask about her qualifications, you can, and then we'll get into the testimony. And what I will do is authorize her to give opinion testimony in the areas of her expertise. Okay?
Yes.
That's good.
All right. I invoke the rule of sequestration. I know you've had an agent in and out, and I know that there was a mention of you having the case agent there, but I wanted to make sure that was addressed completely on the record. I never really ruled on it.
Yes.
Is there an objection to the case agent being in the room?
No, Your Honor, there was not.
Okay. I know there's been some developments that pretty much make
Well,
that.
and I will say this too, that when she has been out, she hasn't talked to any witnesses or anything like that. I mean, it's been out like, there have been times I was like, I need to get this information or that information about something, and she would, go out to do that. So.
Sharon, would you look out there and make sure, or either one of y'all, make sure that he lets us know as soon as that girl gets here. Maybe that's him doing it. They're all here? All right, we'll bring them in. Thanks. All right, Mr. Lamb, you can continue your examination of Dr. Olek. And the way that I left it with the lawyers is that Dr. Olek will be allowed to give opinion testimony in the area of her expertise. If either attorney objects to whether or not a foundation has been laid for any particular question, we'll address that as it comes up. All right? Thanks.
Dr. Olek, we take you back to January 14th, 2024. Were you working in the, or did you work in the Phoebe Sumter emergency room that day?
Yes, I did.
And at some point during the time you were working on January 14th, were you involved in or become involved in the care of a child by the name of Romeo Angeles or Jackson Drew Angeles?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And do you know how the child got to the emergency room?
The report was that his father brought him in to the front.
And were you there when he came in?
No, I was not.
Okay. When did you become involved in his care?
I took over my shift at noon, And so I was involved in his care from noon until he was pronounced.
Now, he actually, I think, arrived at like 12:36 p.m.
Usually I will do a 6-hour shift. I apologize, I don't remember exactly the hours of that day. I can find out.
Okay.
But
In any event, were you not the first doctor who treated him?
Correct.
Or examined him?
I took over for Dr. Bussman.
Okay. And is that something that would be typical at the end of a shift?
Yes.
Nonetheless, when you took over, did you conduct your own review and review of the diagnostic materials that were available, like the tests, the radiology studies, etc.?
Yes. When we give report to one another, we give quick, clear, concise report. And while he was doing that, the images were already available, and I was receiving phone calls from Dr. Hayes regarding the reports. And so I was going through them as she was giving me the reports. So it was all very simultaneously.
Is it customary in the practice of medicine, especially in a hospital setting, for one physician to rely on information provided by another physician who is also involved in the care?
It's customary for reports to be given so that things don't get lost, but I always independently review my own patients.
And that's what I was going to ask next. Did you also, in addition to whatever information you were given when you took over the care, did you conduct your own examination and assessment of the patient?
Immediately, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me, just in maybe in terms of various categories, the injuries that you observed or that you found when you examined him?
When I received a report from Dr. Bussman, I knew that the child was critical, and I immediately went into the room to see where we were with drips and with vital signs and examine him head to toe. I noticed that there was a large bruise on the left side of his face, and I remember that it looked like there were fingerprints or something along the line of a hand. There were multiple bruises on the forehead, on the right side of the skull. There was a large swelling to the posterior skull. There was some crepitus on his arm. Crepitus means it's like poppy, which the nurse had told me they tried to put a line in, and the line was not successful, so I assumed that was from that situation. And I noticed that the child's abdomen was very distended. At that time, the child had already gone through CPR. He was intubated. He had multiple IV drips in place. I requested that they place some more because of the type of medications that were being given. We needed to have more access, and so they put into intraosseous IV access into the legs. And from there, I don't remember anything else on the legs.
Okay. Did you review the lab results, the lab findings that were in the record?
Yes, sir. Immediately it was noted that his liver enzymes were well up above the normal limits for a child. At his age, they should be right around 20 to 60, and they were in the 8,000 range, indicating some type of traumatic injury or some type of injury to the liver. Additionally, it was noted that his blood count was low. For a child of his age, it should be about 10.5 to 14, and it was in the 9 range, indicating that there was some type of blood loss somewhere. Again, the very first thing that I encountered when I came onto that shift while Mike was giving me a report was the images that I was going through actively with Dr. Hayes, and there was significant bleeding in the brain, significant bleeding within the liver.
Let's talk about those. Let's talk about those separately, okay? And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we'll start with the injury to the bleeding with the liver and around the liver. Is that you said, I believe just a moment ago, that the labs indicated to you that there was a traumatic injury, that there had been a traumatic injury to the liver?
And I apologize with that verbiage. There was some type of injury to the liver. When I mentioned the traumatic aspect, I say because there was a very large liver laceration. The liver laceration means a cut within the liver, and that therefore there was some type of damage to the liver because of that. And we expect those numbers to go up high when we see some type of injury.
Would you expect those numbers to go up high very quickly, depending on the nature and extent of the injury?
Correct.
So the laceration to the liver, how does one get a laceration to the liver? How do you lacerate a liver?
It
What
has
causes
to be with some type of trauma to the liver. The liver does not spontaneously lacerate.
And what type of trauma might cause the liver to lacerate?
There has to be some direct blow to the liver.
Are you aware that there are some studies and experiences, clinical experiences in other settings where it has been opined that that performing CPR on a patient can result in lacerations to the liver somewhere between 1 and 11% of the time?
I believe the numbers are closer to less than 1% of the time, and that involves the medial aspect of the liver right underneath the sternum. In this particular case, the laceration involved the right side of the liver, which is in the back area. If our sternum is in the middle, the laceration was back here, nowhere near where we would have been doing CPR.
Okay, so the liver doesn't, it's first of all, it's a large organ, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And is it divided in some way?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how is it referred to, how are the divisions of the liver referred to?
We have different lobes.
Lobes, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the I guess the current literature, it reflects that there's less than 1% chance of laceration due to CPR.
I believe that number was 0.5.
Okay, and in that instance, you said the portion of the liver that's under the sternum. What portion of the liver would that be?
That would be the left or the medial.
Okay. Did you observe anyone performing CPR on the child at any time while you were there?
Yes.
And if you had observed anyone performing CPR badly or using the wrong techniques or with their hands in the wrong location, would you have intervened in some way?
100% yes. We're a team and we always make sure that we are doing things properly.
Are you familiar with I think it's something that may be referred to as like a CPR coach or CPR review or something, some language like that?
Are you referring to the team lead?
Perhaps so. I'm not sure what the
code.
language is, but in other words, that when CPR is being performed, is it customary for there to be someone intentionally observing the CPR while it's being done?
Yes.
Okay. Who is that person called typically, or what is that person's role typically?
So they are recording and telling us when medications are due, and they're watching everything play out in front. So they're just kind of an overseer of everybody.
And is part of that person's role, part of that person's job, to be sure that CPR is being performed properly?
Yes, we all do that as a team, though.
Okay. I understand it may not be the same person even from hour to hour or whatever,
Right.
but there is a person at any given time, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Are you aware of anyone who was observing other persons doing CPR? Are you aware of anyone who felt like or believed or observed someone performing CPR badly or incorrectly?
No.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to whether or not the injury to this child's liver was the result of CPR being performed?
There was 0% chance this was secondary to CPR.
Thank you. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot something. The liver injury, was that an injury that you how would you designate that injury in terms of the time frame or the time in which it would have occurred? I mean, do you think it would have been recent, chronic, or what?
So when we look at the labs, we noted that the AST and the ALT, which are the liver numbers, were quite elevated in the 8,000 and 5,000 range, but the bilirubin was still normal. We expect a bilirubin rise when there's any type of liver injury to start rising after 4 to 8 days, and so that indicated to me that this was a fairly fresh injury. Additionally, with the degree of laceration that was there, and the amount of bleeding that was there, you expect that blood count to be a lot less if time had progressed.
Would that indicate to you then that that injury would have occurred within some relatively recent time frame?
It would have been within a few hours.
With respect to the injury at the back of the head, were you able to ultimately make a diagnosis as to what that injury was?
He had multiple skull fractures, which is why there was swelling at the base of the skull.
What parts of the skull were fractured?
That was the posterior parietal and occipital bones, so it was right here, and it was such a big fracture. It went from the top of the head all the way down to the base of the head, base of the skull.
On this side?
It was on the, I thought it was the right, okay, it said to the left of the midline.
Okay. And so, was there a fracture to another bone in the back of the skull, the back of the head?
What I remember is, so there was parietal bone and occipital bone, and there were several fractures in that area. It wasn't just one piece. Other than that, I do not recall any other fractures in that area.
If you look at, go ahead, step over just here for just a second. This is you have a copy of
Yes, sir.
Your notes, right? And then there's this is a copy. This is State's Exhibit 26 that I'm looking at now, and there's a particular. Sorry, give me 1 second. Do you recall there being a finding of a fracture of the occipital?
Yes, sir. It was the parietal and the occipital bone of the skull.
Okay, parietal and occipital. Okay. So is that part of what you were talking about when you said with the fracture went back up?
Yes, sir.
It was back here, but also on the side.
It involved both places.
Involved both places, both of those bones, on the side and the back.
Yes.
Were there symptoms? I mean, when I say symptoms, in this instance, I'm talking about that you were immediately observing in the emergency room, symptoms that would be associated with the injury to the back and side of the head?
Yes, sir. When I was involved with this child, the child was unresponsive, being intubated, no response to painful stimuli. He was on multiple pressors, and therefore the only things that I can tell you are what I was able to observe at that point. And there was pink, frothy liquid coming out of the baby's nose that sometimes indicates to us that that's CSF, or fluid that's around the brain, that has leaked out into the nose, from the nose. And so I was able to visualize that. CSF is cerebral spinal fluid. It's the fluid that protects our brain and our spine when there's significant head trauma that sometimes can break through and come out of the nose.
Okay.
And so I remember seeing that. But short of that, the child was unresponsive at that time, which is what I would expect.
Was there bleeding associated with that injury in the back of the head?
I believe there was some. I don't remember there being a large amount. I remember more the degree of swelling that was present, and it could have been that the staff had started to clean some of that prior to, I don't know. Back here?
Yeah, I'm not referring to external bleeding. I'm talking about internally. Was there bleeding?
Yes, sir. On the imaging, on the CAT scan, there was a large amount of bleeding.
Okay, so there was a large amount of internal bleeding at the back of the brain or the back of the skull?
So it's in multiple locations, but yes.
Okay. What would cause a fracture of the occipital bone and or the parietal bones? What things could cause that fracture to occur?
There has to be some type of blunt trauma in order for that to occur.
Does the trauma, you said there has to be some sort of blunt trauma, does it have to be focalized in some sense to that particular area, or might a trauma to another part of the head cause those bones to break in the back?
It has to be focal to the back of the skull. In this particular instance, there was bruising in the front as well as the fracture to the posterior skull. There is no way you could have an injury in the front that would cause that into the back. It had to have been a direct blow to the posterior skull.
The injuries to the front of the face, the bruising, and I think it's bruising and swelling in several locations.
Yes.
What would those injuries reflect in terms of the origin or source of those injuries?
You would expect, if somebody fell, that you would expect bruising directly where that fall would be.
So the part of the body that
being
impacts?
hit, yes.
Okay.
Or if somebody was hit. I know in this particular situation, the child had bruising in multiple locations on the head.
So would one fall account for the injuries to the front of the head, the side of the head, and the back of the head all at once?
No, sir.
At this point, it's outside the scope of this expert's expertise in testifying.
Well, Your Honor, I think that it is I tell you what, I'll rephrase the question and ask it again. Would one point of trauma to the front of the head would one point of trauma cause the injuries to the front of the head, the side of the head, and the back of the head all at once?
No.
was the most severe injury that you observed of the ones that you identified?
The brain bleed was the most severe injury that ultimately led to this child going unresponsive. And those carry up to a 50% mortality rate. They're very, very significant when we see them.
Was there any condition that you identified with respect to this child, that would have explained brain bleeds or multiple brain bleeds other than some kind of traumatic impact?
So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going back to the labs. Within our labs, our platelets were normal. And I just wanted to verify that they were normal. And so the answer is no.
So whatever the source of the trauma, is it your opinion that it is trauma that was the cause of the brain bleed?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to the time frame in which an injury to the head, to the back of the head, to the side of the head, or the front of the head, do you have an opinion as to the time frame in which the symptoms that this child presented with would be manifested from the time of trauma until the symptoms became pronounced?
Object again, Your Honor, on the same ground, she's not qualified to make that statement as an expert outside of her expertise.
I think you can ask her some more foundational questions, but that is different than what we discussed before.
It's much different than what we discussed, I thought. So
you can ask the foundational questions.
based on your experience and your training, your education, and your experience, are you able to formulate an opinion as to when an injury might have occurred if, based on the symptoms that are presenting at any given time?
Yes.
Your Honor, I object again to any response to that unless there's a foundation laid of how to just say in your experience, what is that experience? If you're going to say it, you need to do that.
I overrule the objection. I overrule the objection.
So, is that something that is part of what you do? Is trying to assess how long this condition has existed, when this condition occurred?
Based off of the imaging, it mentioned that this was an acute subdural bleed. An acute subdural bleed within minutes to just a few hours. It's expected that the pressure will increase in the brain to such a level that will cause symptoms which can include unresponsiveness and death.
Would that time frame be dependent in any way on the extent of the bleeding?
Yes. It also depends on if it is a child, adult, or an elderly. In this particular scenario, there's not as much room in the brain, and so this is an even quicker scenario. When that pressure builds up, there's nowhere else for it to go.
Let me ask you to I'm going to ask it this way. Do you have an opinion as to the likelihood that after the child received the injury to the back and side of his head, that after he received the injury, that he would have still been behaving normally, sitting up, eating chips, exercising fine motor skills like holding a cup and drinking out of a cup and watching TV and so forth, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the child could be behaving that way after receiving this injury?
The amount of bleeding that was present within the brain, there's a 0% chance that this child can be normal. He would have some type of symptom.
So once the injury occurred, he would have had, is that what you're saying? That he would have had
Yes.
essentially immediate symptoms,
Yes.
whether at some level?
Yes.
What if the injury had occurred the night before? Okay, that at some time in the night, well, let's just say at some point prior to 11:57 p.m. on Saturday night, that the injury had occurred to the child. Then, do you have an opinion as to the probability or likelihood that the child would have been able to not only behave normally for some period of time, but then go to sleep 7, 8, 9 hours, get up, still be behaving somewhat normally, and then sort of all of a sudden experience a loss of consciousness hours later?
With the degree of bleeding that is present, I would not expect him to wake up.
If you assumed, we'll just say assumed for the purpose of this question, if you assume that the child had a diaper that had bloody stool, that there was blood in the feces or whatever, of a diaper that had been on the child, that had been taken off sometime before he was at the hospital. If he'd had bloody stool, would that have any connection to anything that you observed at the hospital with regard to the injuries to this child?
No, the liver does not connect into the colon.
Okay. So if he's bleeding around the liver, just into the abdomen, does that blood not just transmogrify or something into the intestines, and where it can then be flushed out in a bowel movement?
No. It goes into the peritoneal cavity, and they're separate areas. It cannot go into the colon.
And if it doesn't go into the colon, then it's not going to be expressed in the form of bloody stool, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if there was a bloody stool, do you have an opinion as to whether it would have had any connection to any of the stuff that you were examining?
I do not believe that there was any connection.
Is there any avenue, any path by which blood in the brain, in the skull, whatever, under the scalp, that results from a brain bleed, is there any pathway from which that blood would seep into the colon or into the intestines and be flushed out in the bowel movement?
No.
Why did this baby die?
This baby died as a result of massive head trauma.
No further questions.
All right, Mr. Gamble, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. doctor, now you know that, or you believe at least that you know the cause of the death being massive head trauma, correct?
Yes, sir.
But of course, as you sit here today, you don't know anything about the facts or circumstances as far as who caused that, correct?
No, sir.
In fact, you don't even know if there's a who caused it. It could have been by some other means. You just know there was blunt trauma that led to the death of the child, correct?
That is correct.
In other words, blunt trauma could occur from a car wreck, let's say, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, we know the child was not in a car wreck, I think, here. There's not any reason to believe that, but that would just be an example, right?
Yes, sir.
And there are various other things that could have happened, including accidentally, correct?
Yes.
And you are aware that one of the leading causes of death to small children is accidental falls, correct?
Yes, the physical examination findings, I believe, would be different.
But you do acknowledge that that is one of the
Yes.
leading causes of death, correct?
Yes.
And in this particular case, I know that you mentioned on the liver being lacerated. You talked about that, but and CPR. You asked questions about CPR. You will acknowledge that there are some studies that at least show at times, if CPR is done incorrectly, it can cause a laceration of the liver. Correct?
To the left lobe of the liver.
And that it's more likely to happen with a small child than it would be someone bigger, because it's harder to CPR that small child, isn't it?
That's incorrect.
It's not harder to CPR a small child?
No, sir.
You got a very small body of area, correct?
You use one hand in a child. You
Be
use
careful,
two in an
right?
adult.
Can't do two hands because that'll be too much, right?
Yes, it's easier in a child.
And that's what I mean about it being a little harder. You have to be a little more careful with the child, correct? Is that right?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And you testified about you felt it done right, but the truth of the matter is you came into the scene after CPR had already been performed for a while, correct?
When I witnessed CPR, when I had to initiate the subsequent code, that was performed correctly.
But you did not see CPR that was done before you got there, correct?
I was not there in the beginning, no, sir.
So you're really not qualified to state whether or not the CPR was done properly prior to you arriving, correct? Not from your own first-hand knowledge.
Correct.
You might read notes or be told that, but you weren't there, right?
Correct.
Now, when you talk about, let me ask you if you are familiar with sutures of skull.
Yes, sir.
And that's where the skull is kind of divided to begin with and begins to join together as you get a little older, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the 5 different areas where sutures are located?
Yes, sir.
Pretty familiar with when they form as far as solidifying, or are you?
They should start to be solidifying around the time of his age. They should have already been solidified.
Now let me ask you about, I believe, and I may mispronounce this if I
okay.
do, correct me. The squamous suture, do you know where it's located?
No, sir.
If I told you I believe it connects the temporal and parietal bones above your ears, would that sound about right? If you don't know, that's fine.
I do not believe that's correct, but thank you.
Okay. So you're just not sure about those types. Is there some of those?
I would think that would be the occipital suture.
Are there areas of the suture areas that take sometime as long as 3, 4, 5 years to completely solidify on children?
It should be 2 years,
This child was a year and a half old, correct?
18 months.
Now, if this child, I know you've testified that the child, you do not believe that the injury to the back of the head and the front of the head could have come from the same incident, correct?
The only circumstance I can see would be in the case of a motor vehicle accident.
Which we know is not the case.
Correct.
Well, let's say the child fell from a fairly high level. Boom! Fell straight down. Let's say landed in a way that hit right toward the back of the head. Could have caused skull fracture,
Your
correct?
Honor, I'm going to object based on that, his objection that this witness shouldn't testify as to whether this fall or that fall from this height or that height or whatever might or could cause these injuries. I mean, if we...
That was the nature of your caveat to her qualifications.
Initially, and then she was allowed after my objection to go into
No,
something.
the test, that was a different, it could not have, it could have been, it had to be more than one point of impact. Now,
Yes.
I'm not gonna let, as I said, either of you go into all of the hypotheticals that were done with the previous witness, so I sustain that objection.
Doctor, do you, in your practice, take continuing education and that type thing?
Yes, sir. I'm up
Required
to
to do
date.
so, I suppose?
Yes, sir.
Seminars and that type thing, correct?
Yes.
Do you take periodicals and things to keep you updated as well?
Yes, sir.
Do you keep up to date through some of those from time to time?
I am board certified, and in order to remain board certified, we have to keep up with CME.
And I apologize, I asked that and didn't really clarify. I realize that part, but and once you do that, though, I'm more concentrating on there's lots of literature that comes out that's scientifically important, I guess you could call it, that you could or could not read. Do you keep up with your medical profession through some of those type of literatures from time to time?
Yes, sir.
Are they journals like the New England Journal of Medicine, that type thing, or is it other ways that you keep up?
I use Up to Date. I also use the American Academy of Family Physician, their journals, and I go to live CME.
Have you ever used brain pathology?
No, sir.
Have you ever looked at British Journal of Neurosurgery?
No, sir.
Are you familiar with Dr. Omaya by any chance?
No.
Are you familiar with Dr. Mary Case by any chance?
No.
Those are not people that you're familiar with in your profession?
No.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
All right, any read the rest?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, now just witness